Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join Martin, Dave, Spencer and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
So, welcome to another T2 Hubcast with me, Martin Johnson, and
me, Spencer Locker.
It's Spencer Locker. He returns. So, Spencer, you've been doing a lot of work recently for your sins, either that or because I've railroaded you into it. But you've been doing a lot of work for the Hub and for our customers around organisational change and organisational design and a lot of these high-level topics around from the leadership perspective. But one of the things I wanted to jump on today and pick your brains on for the listeners was a little bit around change, because we're getting a lot of customers asking about, not even asking a question, they're more or less venting how much they are struggling with change programs.
Yes, yeah.
Or more specifically, how much they struggle to communicate change, to just execute change in general.
Yeah.
So I guess you've been doing a bit on it. So I just wanted to pick your brains, and I wanted to see if we can share some real insight with the listeners today. If anybody's out there listening and you've got a program on or a project or an initiative, whether it's a transformation or an innovation project or whatever, which requires a big step change in the business, how can we help you with that? How can we help you take some steps forward, if that makes sense? So I guess first question then, Spence.
Yeah.
What are the fundamentals of communicating change? Because it does seem like the communication element is what most people struggle with.
Yes, and as much as I don't like to be pinned down and make certain statements because of who I am and what I do, it is vital that to achieve a successful change and make that change sustainable, we need to be using effective communication for this to happen. When we start looking at things like organizational design, organizational redesign, basically people look at that as separate to change management. But the thing is, design and redesign are change. It's all about change. You're moving from one position to another position, whether that change is in products, whether it's in process, whether it's in technology, whether it's a marketplace derived thing because you're trying to
shift in the marketplace.
Once you identify a potential weakness or something that you want to explore, then you start changing this design within the company. And this organizational design may not be organization wide. It may be a specific thing within a specific area of the company. But the thing is, I mean, we've done we the royal we have done a lot of these pathways on the Hub. And it's really opened my eyes. I mean, I was pretty happy and confident with my knowledge beforehand. But it's really opened my eyes to the amount of bobbins that's out there. That all these, I mean, when you start looking at this, the 3 steps for this, the 5 steps for this, the 7 steps for this, the 8 steps, and it's all the same thing, but given different words and either expanded to make it bigger and look more professional or condensed to make it quicker and more attractive. And when somebody's looking at changing the company, when it's organizational design, redesign, structural redesign, whatever, it needs to be planned correctly. And part of that planning is going to take time, but part of that planning has to ensure that everybody knows what's going on.
And that's communication.
Yeah.
And just to sort of add a precursor to this as well, Spence, because there's a pathway I've written and there's a message that I always give to businesses around this. And let's start before I bring you back in on the communication aspect is, people confuse the terminologies change with things like transformation and innovation, etc.
That's a really good point.
And to sort of, we talk about this in a pathway, but just to sort of, for our listeners, just to clarify it, you need to understand what we're talking around when we say about change, right? So let me just give you the definition. So for example, in an organization, an innovation project, whether it's around design or strategic level or products and services or structural or whatever it might be, an innovation project is when you are completely rethinking or reimagining the way something is achieved. So it's like ripping up the rule book and doing something in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Right. That's an innovation. It's completely reimagining or rethinking something. A transformation project or initiative is when you are starting at point A and you want to get to point C.
Yeah.
And you therefore say, we already do something in a certain way, or we already have something to a certain caliber or standard, but we want to improve and transform it.
Yeah.
Which means we're going to go on this journey. We need to know, we know where we are, we know where we're heading, and that's transformation is the journey of getting there. Whereas change is fundamentally can apply to most redesigns or innovations or transformations, but change is the process of communicating and executing, but from a technological perspective, from a process perspective, and from a people perspective, executing that journey or that innovation or that transformation. So change is a little bit more of the how, how you manage the change of this time. And that's why I'm guessing is starting with communication. It's all built around that, right?
Well, very much so. I mean, when you start talking about changing process, changing technology, there's going to be something motivating that. There's going to be a reason for that, and that reason is going to be pretty obvious to you and the stakeholders and the all the people that are, let's say, the top end of the organisation. There's going to be it's going to be pretty straightforward. So you've got the technology, you've analysed the process and you're going to change it for better or, well, obviously for better, I need to say better or worse, but for better. So that leaves the people, doesn't it? So what we're going to do about communicating the change to people.
Right, so let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So is a consistent message across all mediums, is that the right way? Does that work?
Consistency. There is a consistency, but it's not as straightforward as just being consistent, because consistent suggests to people that one blanket statement will do the job.
Yeah, so we know this time and time again. Organizations have they launch a new product or service, or they launch a new way of working, or they restructure the organization, or they make a major announcement of change, and they get the corporate email, which goes out blanket to everybody from the board down to the shop floor, right? That's usually the process we observe, right?
That certainly
what
is,
you're saying is there's some value to that, but we're not considering the whole picture if we think that's the way to communicate change.
Consistency, yes, we like consistency. For it to be consistent and for it to be effective, it needs a lot of planning. However, it's the delivery of that message.
Yeah.
Because we have such a diverse workforce, a diverse range of employees. And when I say diverse, I'm not necessarily referring to what political people use as a sort of a name or a word to sort of click onto. But as we've worked with many companies in Trans2 Performance, and every time they seem to be blown away when we start talking about the people, about their unconscious motivators, about what motivates them, and how that message is delivered, and how not necessarily how the message is delivered, but how their perception is, what their perception is of that message, because we need them to understand, but not necessarily a blanket statement. It's how is it going to affect you?
So you've got me thinking here, Spence, and I'm guessing, let me try and pick something out here, what you're saying. There's almost two levels of communication required for change.
Yeah.
There is the corporate level, where the initiation of the communication around what is changing has to carry a level of consistency and hit the masses.
Certainly.
However, it's not enough in isolation. What you're saying is where that is backed up by an organization's ability to transcend the message down through the chain and start applying it on an interpersonal level based on on individuals and how they like to communicate and personality styles and unconscious motivators.
Certainly.
So there's an element of when communicating change, yes, consistency and clarity at an organizational level can kick things off.
Yeah.
But we need senior influencers on the ground managers, department heads, or whatever it might be, starting to tackle the interpersonal communication, which is therefore how you capture people's hearts and minds, settle nerves, answer questions,
Certainly.
reassure, etc. Where it's just in isolation, a blanket communication with none of that work, it'll land well with some and not with others. Is what you're saying.
Somebody's going to. If we look at the stakeholders, we start looking at the sort of executive management team who you need to get on board because you need that support from above. You need that support from the executive management team who will almost sort of champion it for you. They will give you the resources you need. They will give you the time that you need if you can get it across to them. However, they're not all the same. They're not all automatons, robots, whatever, they're all they're different people with different motivators. So you may have somebody who is very process detail orientated, almost binary. They need knowledge, they need time to process that knowledge and make sense of it themselves. Whereas you've also got people like drivers, people who are driven, people who are motivators, people who are buying to it, fast paced. They want to sell a dream, they want to they're buying a dream.
Detail. They don't need the detail. They just need the vision, why, where we're headed.
So you've got to communicate the same message to different people. We're going to, the same message, the consistent message to different people with different motivators. And that, to get them on board, you're going to have to suss out how people work. And that's all well and good when you're talking about a reasonably small and reasonably close-knit group of influencers.
So do you think, therefore, that so what I'm picking out here, Spence, and let me just reiterate this because it's fascinating, is yes, we understand, yes, we agree that there needs to be consistency and clarity with corporate communications around change. But what we're saying is, if we really want to penetrate through the organisation and secure the buy-in we need from the masses to effectively come on this journey and implement the change, at a managerial level, or as you go through either upwards or downwards in the organisation, you need to apply interpersonal communication. So we are communicating the consistent message, but in the way that individuals can consume and accept it. And therefore, are you saying that the leadership team and the management team across the board is absolutely crucial in this process, and therefore them having the training and development or the knowledge and insight of how to read and connect with different people and deliver that same message in many different ways is of paramount importance?
Very much so. Right. Very much. And that's one of the reasons why we do what we do, how we do it.
Yeah.
So you've got to get those people, the group that you've just been talking about there, they need to sort of understand it. And because they're different, when we can demonstrate to them, when they can learn that, you know what, just because I get it doesn't mean to say they get it. And the message doesn't have to be different. It's just got to be pitched in a different way. Sometimes, I mean, if you start looking at people on a possibly a little bit of a lower level, you get a message from above. This is how it's going to be. This is how it's going to change. Don't get any more information than that. So as a manager, team leader, whatever, that's the message you pass to your people. Straight away, your people are going to be like, well, what are we going to do about that?
Let's put it into a real context. You get an organizational change initiative in a production-based or manufacturing organization to completely change the shift patterns of the workers, right? Let's say this happens. You get the corporate communication down from the board. We're changing shift patterns. It was this. It's now going to be this. These are the pros. These are the cons. People are going to be happy about this, but they're not going to be happy about this. But look, we've made this decision for this reason. Go, right? As a manager then, what you're saying is you've got to go into your department and you've got to go, right, I know these 2 or 3 people are not going to be happy with this. And I know these 3 or 4 will be okay and they'll swallow it up, etc. But either way, I need to deliver this message in the most appropriate way for all of the 6 individuals in my team. Which means for you, Spencer, if you was in this as an example, you'd like a bit of detail, you like a bit of an explanation, you like logic. So you'd have to get your head around the process, and I would have to spend some time with you and not just drop it on you and waltz off. We'd probably have to have a sit down, a coffee, 30-minute, answer any questions, And once you've made sense of it in your mind, you'd be on board.
And that's
whereas
the thing.
Dave, I can say to Dave, who works with us, Spencer, right, Dave, next week shift patterns are changing, but at a high level, this is why. And he's likely to go, all right.
Yeah,
cool.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So that's what you're talking about, right?
That's what we're saying, is we've got such diversity in our people, we've got to make sure that they get the answers, the answers to the questions that they're asking themselves. Why am I changing? How's it going to affect me? How's it going to affect my team? How's it going to affect the company? Because this is the mistake that upper management tend to make. It's a case of, this is a hard word, so I've got to deliver it hard. Yeah?
Yeah.
They seem to forget that everybody in the company want the same thing. Everybody in the company want the company to succeed.
Or to not challenge that, but you'd like to think so, yes, and in most cases. And even the ones who are not fully bothered about the company succeeding because they're just collecting a wage, right?
Yeah.
Everybody in the company wants to be self-fulfilled and wants to satisfy their own motivators.
That's it, yeah.
So your point still stands.
Yes.
One statement or one style can't hit all,
can't
right?
cater for everybody.
Okay, so another question for you, because one of the things we see organizations and managers doing with change is usually a lot of people think that major change is driven from the top, from the board down. Now, it can be, but as we know, in many organizations, even some of the larger ones, it can be driven from the mid-level or from the heads of or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Now, the way this happens is they tend to think if you're trying to secure buy-in from above, first of all, to make the change, once you get the stakeholder backing, job's done. That's my job done. I've got it up through the board. It's signed off. This change is happening, whether anybody likes it or not.
Yeah.
And it's the old adage of you get the stakeholders on board and it's done, right?
Yeah. Well, no.
What's your thoughts?
No, it's not. No, it's not. I mean, what we've got to look at is, the stakeholders have bought into it. Yes, they're giving you support, and that is essential. However, who is this change going to affect and who is it not going to affect? Because when you start talking about change, we could be talking about something in isolation. We could be talking about a particular process or in a particular area of the company rather than company-wide.
Yeah.
So you've got to identify who is it going to affect? Who is going to be affected by this change? And then you've got to hunt them down.
Yeah.
I mean, they're easy to find. They're on the shop floor.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, as you said, you've got these people, right? This person, I'm going to tell them and they're going to go, whoop, yeah, I'm in there. Great stuff. I'm going to tell this person and that person's going to go, right, okay. Right, I can see this working. Okay, yeah. And they're sort of there. And there's other people who are going to come across to you as being resistant to change.
Oh, yeah. Or they're going to be blatantly resistant, right? They're going to be quite outspoken by it. And I guess what you're saying there then, Spencer, is don't undervalue the stakeholder management downwards or sidewards as much as you do upwards, because winning the hearts and minds of anybody in the organization who is going to be directly or indirectly affected by this change is as important. Because just because you've got sign off from the board or at a senior level it's approved and it's going ahead, it doesn't mean that your job is not going to be made incredibly hard by other people who are resisting the change.
Yes, but are they resisting the change? That's the question I'm saying. If you haven't delivered that message, if their perception of your message is skewed, then they may appear resistant to change. And I'm not saying for a minute that everybody will be supportive and nobody will be resistant. There will be some people who are resistant. But as you said, some people need to make sense of it. They need information, a certain amount of detail, and the time to consider it. So whilst you might be thinking that they're resistant to change, actually, they're just trying to make sense of it. How is it affecting me? How is it affecting my team? How is it affecting the company? How is it affecting the process? All these questions that they have, they need answering. So a blanket statement ain't going to give them the detail they want. The other thing is, the place they're in now is comfortable. They don't want to leave the comfort zone because we're doing what we're doing. Okay, this is good. I'm happy. I've been doing this for a few years. This is great.
We become creatures of habit, right?
But the change is out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
If you
everything we talk about chimps and potentially, is this a threat to me? What does this mean for me, my department, my job, my future, etc. Yeah. right, you touched upon something then. Give people time to digest the communication and come back. Now, one of the issues with change programs, certainly if they are sensitive or of a an organizational perspective, sometimes there's no opportunity to get to them up front and start sowing the seed and give them time. Sometimes the first time they hear about it is when the company can go public with it or when the organization can start communicating it. But what we do observe, Spencer, is that the best leaders, even at a heads of or a departmental level, even when that communication comes out, they take time to sit down appropriately, talk through, and then either give them a day or so to go away, but come back with another forum, an open forum to say, hit me with all your concerns. I want all your questions, and we'll come back. So it's not just, right, you've heard the news today, this is happening, get on board with it. The best leaders who manage change are the ones who communicate the message or sit down and talk about it, but then they do offer a forum, a period of time later to come back and say, hit me with anything you've got on reflection and let's work through it. Let's see if we can ease your mind. Let's see if we can answer and let's see if we can scenario plan. And that's what I would encourage all managers to do listening to this. If you feel like you're getting bombshells dropped on you from above, at least you can put that umbrella up and you can say, well, how do I want to navigate this change and what it means with my team? And give them the time. I think you said, give them time to think about it and come back.
They'll get detail, but they'll need time to align it in their own minds. Answer the questions that they've got. Because if you don't do that, then you're not going to get the buy-in from them. And you've also got to consider people who aren't going to be directly affected by change. Because you may sort of turn around, analyze the process or whatever the change is that you're doing and say, right, this is going to directly affect these people and may indirectly affect these people, but pay no heed to the people who it doesn't affect. So let's not communicate with them because they don't need to know. But if you don't give them information, they'll create their own information.
Oh, of course. And that's the biggest thing we see what goes wrong with change programs. By a lack of information or a poorly delivered message, people are left to put 2 and 2 together and come up with 16. And read into what this might mean and this might progress into job redundancies. This new technology system is designed to put these amount of people out of a job. And that happens. So we've got to counteract that by taking our time, delivering the message, answering questions. And you know what? To do that, it comes back to Simon Sinek's start with the why, right? You can't just communicate the change and what it means and what it entails. You've got to be able to be fully knowledgeable and aware as a leader of why the hell we are doing this. And normally organizations are implementing change to some benefit of the organization and its people. Very rarely is anybody implementing change for any other reason, but to try and make an improvement. So as long as you become really watertight and on the why, on the story, it makes your job easier to say, listen, I know this means X and that might present a challenge, but this is why we're doing it. Ultimately, the bigger picture is this, and this is what it means for us all.
And the way to transcend that, the way to actually challenge that is prior planning. We talk about the 6 Ps. Prior planning prevents and understanding. But the thing is, if you spend the time doing the planning before you actually instigate the change, then the message that's going to be fed down is going to be consistent and it's going to be detailed. If that planning is executed correctly, at some stage of that planning, you're going to involve the people who are down there doing it because they are doing it. And how many times do you know you've talked to people on the shop floor, they've turned around and said, you know what, we could do this better, we could do this more efficiently, we could do this, we could do that, blah blah blah, but nobody listens to us because we're on the shop floor. Involve them.
Absolutely.
If you want to achieve something, talk to the people who can do it. Ask them questions. Absolutely. Ask for their opinions, and you obviously you can't do it to everybody, but the thing is, once those questions have been asked, then the spark of change is already there. Hey, somebody was asking me about how we could do this, how we could do that.
You've transferred ownership. Once somebody feels that they are part of the change and not the recipient of it, then there's no change management to do. They're on the ship. They're driving the ship, right?
Exactly,
So for non-sensitive change, where you can in the process engage people and have them contribute, it makes your life even easier because that triggers crowd contagion. You've already got your circle of trust, when it's announced. So just coming up to time here, Spence. So I want to summarize what I've heard, and then I'm going to invite you for final comments and anything that I've missed. So key principles when communicating change. We talked at the start what change is, and change is the process of, implementing any transformation, any innovation, any change project technologically from a process perspective and from a people perspective. A large part of that is communication. 2 levels of communication for us. Yes, we understand there has to be a corporate level of communication. An initial announcement will usually come from the office of the CEO or the leadership team that says, this is the announcement, right? That has to be consistent. It's probably usually in the medium of email or whatever it is, on an intranet or a conference call or whatever the preferred mode of delivery. However, your biggest point was it doesn't stop there. If we truly want to communicate change effectively, we have to empower our managers, arm our managers and the people who it's going to be affected by in the process, and they have to deliver interpersonal and situationally relevant communication. Be consistent with the message, but when you come across the analytical in your team, you need to sit down, give them time, give them detail, answer questions. When you come across the driver, give them why we're doing it, when we're heading, where we're heading, and when it's happening, right? And just slightly, understand, be that social chameleon we always talk about, because we need it to land well with each and every person. The other thing you've said is don't just focus on stakeholders upwards and then it's job's done. Right? Your stakeholders below, sidewards, or anybody who is impacted, give it the same level of attention with the hearts and minds, engage them in the process. And another thing you said which really stood out to me, give them time. Right? If we're going to have change, which makes people naturally feel uncertain or worried, right? Give them the detail, talk about the why, right? Give them time to digest it and think, and somehow have an open forum or a forum for them to come back, ask any questions, vent off,
seek clarification.
And that's what great leaders of change do. They don't just communicate it one way and say, get on with it. It's life. I took some good stuff from that. With a couple of minutes left, Spence, anything I've missed or any final points from you?
No, all I would do is reinforce that. I mean, when you start talking about giving them time, and then you mentioned something about sort of time sensitivity. Change fast, fail fast. If you want this change to be to be successful and sustainable, you need to plan. That planning can't be rushed. When you execute it, it can't be rushed. Communicating it backwards and forwards. You've got people who can apply the process. They can do the process thing. They can analyze the process. The technology thing, great stuff. Take time with your people, because sometimes they're not resistant to change. They just don't understand why. They need information. They need the time to align it in their brains, and give them the time, because you want this change to be sustainable. You employ these people for a reason. They're valuable to you as people and as employees. So you're investing in your people. You're investing in your employees because you want them on board. You want them with you. So don't skimp on the planning and don't skimp on the time.
Do you know what? Final point from me on that, loved it, is yes, some change programs and change initiatives fail because of a technology mishap or because of a product and service mishap or whatever, but it's very rare in the modern age. Most change projects fail because of the people element, the resistance, the failure to get buy-in, the failure to win hearts and minds and shift people to a completely new way of thinking. And therefore, what we're saying is your planning, it should be a given. Your technological change in the modern day should be effective. Changing processes should be with the right team and the right time should be easy. It's the people side that is always going to be your biggest challenge with change. And don't do it a disservice. What is what you're saying? Plan it, win hearts and minds, give them time, prepare for resistance, 2 levels of communication, win stakeholders in every direction. And it seems to me that in most programs, it is the part that people prepare for the least. We'll deal with that when the announcement goes out. And then before you know it, you're struggling. Spence, with 50 seconds left, I think we've just about nailed this for this Hubcast. So fascinating insight. For anybody on the hub who wants to look on the pathways, look in organisational design and change, Spencer's done some wonderful work. And if you can't find what you're looking for, you can request a pathway and we'll look into it for you. But other than that, Spencer, thank you very much.
Cheers, Martin.
Speak soon. Bye.